You know, it's kind of ironic how the devs can give Malga, who's this crash out of a character, one of the most boring kits ever added to the game. Because basically the core of Malga's gameplay loop revolves around shooting the tank. And this is mainly because of two things: his passive Berserker and his ability Cardiac Overdrive. So what Berserker does is that it gives you overhealth for dealing critical damage. And how Malga gets easy crit damage is by burning the enemy with his left chain gun and then dealing damage with the right chain gun. This gets even more ridiculous when combined with Cardiac Overdrive. What Cardiac Overdrive does is that it reduces incoming damage that Malga and his allies take by 30% and allows them to heal by doing damage. Now the problem is, these abilities heavily incentivize you to shoot the tank. Because Malga's chain guns don't have much damage output, you're not going to get a lot of help by shooting squishies, on top of most squishies having movement abilities or playing around cover to avoid his fire. So that means your most reliable way of staying alive during team fights is by shooting the tank, which is pretty much a giant health battery for you. The tank has to face you, or else they risk losing space to your team. And because the tank has the biggest hitbox out of everyone on the entire enemy team, that means they're the easiest target to lifesteal health off of to keep you alive during the team fight. And while yes, there are other forms of skill expression by poking out enemy DPS to get them off of your team for a little bit, the majority of his gameplay loop still comes down to shooting the tank in order to stay alive, because he doesn't have damage mitigation. And I kind of want to say that there's more to Malga, but that's pretty much it every game. His gameplay is just very one-dimensional and boring with very little variation. And just because his kit is simple doesn't mean he should be one-dimensional. Let's compare him to Reinhardt, who also has a simple kit. Like, there are so many different ways you can use Reinhardt's abilities. Standing in front of the enemy tank and blocking damage won't win you games as a Reinhardt player. You have to think about managing your shield while mitigating damage. You don't have to hold your shield up and wait for it to break. You can swap between taking damage yourself and using your shield to get as much usage out of it as possible. You have to take risks and know when to charge in on Reinhardt in order to make space for your team without dying in the process. And even when you're charged in, you still have to know how to manage your shield properly, or else you're gonna die. You know, and also one of the most fun things to do with Reinhardt is just charging people off the map. And then you do all that just to immediately get counterpicked by the tank and the enemy team, just to wonder why you even dare playing tank in the first place. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that there are multiple different ways to play Reinhardt, and you're not going to end up doing the same thing every time, even though Reinhardt has a simple kit, compared to this.
It's so boring!
How does that work? Where does that exactly come from? Doesn't make any sense.
Make it stop!
No, it doesn't make sense. Life doesn't make sense. No worries, look at me. You're good girl. You're very lucky guy.
And I hate to keep having to make this point, but there's just no forethought when it comes to playing Malga. So now, hold on, I'm getting tired of looking at this shit. Let's switch to some Doom gameplay. It's better for your health anyway. Okay, so now we can talk about how Malga makes the game boring for everyone. Let's say you're a support player, right? And now your team has a Malga. Because your teammate is playing Malga, the enemy team is most likely gonna pull an Ana so that they can use anti-nade to counter the egregious amounts of health that Malga gets while dealing damage in overdrive. And so now, as a support player, you or the other support has to go Kiriko in order to keep that Malga alive, or else they're gonna get destroyed by anti. You no longer get to have fun on whatever character you're playing. You have to pick Kiriko, or else that Malga is dying. And if you're unfortunate enough to the point where the enemy tank mirror picks Malga, you're probably gonna have to go Ana yourself just to help kill the enemy Malga. And now for the enemy team to keep their Malga alive, one of their supports have to go Kiriko in order to counter your anti. Without Zuzu, the enemy Malga is just gonna get blown up by your team. That's how Malga's existence can take away your freedom of choice of what characters you want to play. And so now, with all that being said, I think Malga needs to be completely overhauled. As we've seen throughout the months he's been out, he's either been extremely oppressive and overpowered, or just very underwhelming. Which is why I think simply changing his stats and how much damage he outputs or how much healing he gains won't change anything, because fundamentally his kit is so flawed. Stat changes don't address the issue of Malga's kit just being one-dimensional and limited, and there's no balance patch that can fix that. And for Cage Fight, my only problem with it is not being able to use movement abilities inside the cage. No, I don't think you should be able to escape it if they were to somehow fix this, but characters like Doomfist who aren't even allowed to punch inside the cage, yeah, that might be slightly ridiculous. At least this way there would be some counterplay in order to survive against Malga while strapped inside Cage Fight. This is what some people have speculated, that they made Cage Fight this way to avoid special instances like Sim Teleport or Tracer Recall from being able to escape the cage, which I also believe to be the case as to why they made it this way. So yeah, that's why I think Malga's boring. I'm gonna go rethink my life choices as to why I continue to play this game, so yeah, like and subscribe if you think PvE was a scam.